Welcome to Fostering Godlike Sexuality at Home. Our goal here is to empower parents to teach their children to see sex in a godlike way.
My name is Brigham Elton. I'm a pornography and sexual addiction counselor who've helped thousands of people overcome even the appeal of pornography. And I'm hoping to get out in front of this and try to help parents to set up their homes to chase godlike sexuality from the beginning.
My name's Andrea, a mother of 4, and I'm learning alongside all you listeners and excited to have these discussions. Thanks for joining us.
Before we get started today, I just would tell individuals to listen to the podcast before.
Yeah.
This just separation of let's redefine masturbation and look at genital self-touch a little more holistically.
Yeah, there's a scale and a spectrum of experiences that include some sort of genital self-touch or stimulation of some kind.
Absolutely.
And so today we really want to hit some of these experiences that happen pre-puberty, right? Yeah. So should we just kind of go over what those were again?
Yeah, let's hit those really quickly. Go ahead.
So first you have a self-touch, genital self-touch that's a body exploring experience, trying to discover and understand what are the parts of my body, what do they feel like, what happens with them, right? And then the next category would be a self-soothing touch, where that touch is being used to actually calm and soothe your mind and your body.
Totally. And I think as a parent, I would look for the differences between these two things.
Mm-hmm.
One is going to be moving around, kind of it's exploring, and the other one's very rhythmic, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
And so if you're trying to identify what's my child doing, are they trying to self-soothe, or are they just kind of learning about their body? That's kind of a thing you can look for.
Oh, I love that.
Is does it have a rhythm to it, or is it just kind of going around more randomly?
Right.
As you try to understand what's my child experiencing.
Yeah. So what are some things I guess the third thing before we kind of go into that would just be this, and that this goes under the self-soothing, is just when it becomes a coping pattern.
Yeah.
Where it's not just isolated experiences of self-soothing, but something that they're turning back to again and again.
Yes.
Which might have more of a pattern of consistency in the place that they're at, or the time that they're at, or the emotion that's underlying their.
Totally. We see I don't want to give a couple examples of those. I've seen kids where they actually will kind of tug on their foreskin of their penis when they're upset, because that'll help them reconnect to their body. Sometimes even a little bit of pain can help a kid to come back to their body. So that's a common one that sometimes parents a little freak out a little bit more about. That's kind of one that happens. Another one is I'm in the car and I'm trying to fall asleep is a common time when parents notice it.
Yeah.
But it's this clitoral touch or vulvaic rubbing.
Yeah.
Right. Another going to sleep is a very calm one, or trying to come down off of being upset. Those are the places that if you consistently see this happening, that's where the coping patterns typically show up, or around those two moments.
Yeah. Do you see it sometimes when there's a little bit of anxiousness, in a movie or something, their kids either bored or they're anxious about what they're seeing?
Yes.
In that they're kind of, their body is down and low, but their mind and their emotions might be kind of more excited.
Yes,
right?
A movie is also a common one that I hear. You know? And when I hear these, I hear these ones with a lot of panic.
Right.
And so let's kind of lean into these, the soothing patterns and the coping pattern ones.
Okay.
Right? But I hear, honestly, when I think they hear it back to them, I think they're oh, wait, I'm really making this bigger than it is, But most people come with a lot of panic.
Right.
And they'll actually self-correct just having me say it back to them, right?
Repeat their experience back to them.
Where I'm okay, so you think that because your child was stroking their own penis during this car ride that you're afraid they're going to end up as a pervert, And I'll just say that question back to them, and they're oh, well, no. And I'm okay. So just I think but as a parent, we get so in our own heads about oh my gosh, right? That it really catastrophizes. But that's where people are coming to me most of the time with is wow, my kid is going to end up being someone who's going to have a Netflix documentary about them.
Right.
Because they're a pervert.
Right. Or even on a smaller scale, they're just going to struggle with this. This is going to be hard for them. They're headed down a certain path,
right? Yeah, and it really and the path that could happen becomes very real to a parent immediately. And so then they are sending this message of like, oh no,
right,
to their child,
yeah.
which is one of the things that might be helpful, just to identify like, okay, is this explore, soothe, or a pattern,
Right.
and like be slow enough as a parent to like identify that. Because if you can be slow enough to identify that, that'll help you to like a little bit before you go after it.
I like that.
When I have a parent actually like talk about it, where I'm like, okay, like let's land on this. Like, what do you believe? Like, do you believe that this like exploratory self-touch for a prepubescent kid, do you believe that that is good?
Yeah.
I cannot think of someone who landed at no.
Oh, yeah.
And like I probably have had this conversation with, I feel safe saying 500, but it might even be close to 1,000 people.
Do you feel like you get sometimes parents that are like, well, when I really think about it, no. Like
Yes.
I do think it's good.
Yes.
And I still have fear about it.
Totally.
Like I think that's where there's a little bit of like confusion and panic. Is this like, wait, this seems like it's probably healthy and normal, but yet I'm feel freaked out.
In fact, if they answer in passing, if I can't get them to pause and think, most of them will go like, well, I don't think that's really good.
Yeah.
But then if I'm like, okay, so like, and then I like will just ask it again. And then almost all of them go like, well, yeah, I guess that is really healthy. Like that's a kid's exploring their own body, but there is this like old pattern of fear that most of us are fighting a little,
right?
Because we have put way more on that behavior than actually is connected to that behavior. And so I think that very quickly, we can send an underlying message of fear. Like one thing we say consistently, right, is that communication is felt first,
right,
and then heard. And so if this parent's coming with all this like, oh no, a kid is feeling
totally
that.
Totally.
And so like where individually have you landed with that like exploratory self-touch?
Yeah, I've landed with like, I think it's so good. I think it's so healthy. Kids need to understand their body and like they need to feel comfortable touching their body.
Yeah.
And that no part of the body should be off limits.
Yeah.
When I think of like how I parented, I mean, my kids, my youngest is 10, my oldest is 17, right? So like this belief of like how good that is newer in my parenting.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely shut down self-touching at different times. Yeah. And oftentimes like I justified it in my mind, like, oh, like I don't want them to do that in front of people.
Yeah.
But I feel like underlying was this fear of like, and I actually just don't want them doing that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not comfortable with it.
Totally.
Because I wasn't comfortable with my own.
Totally.
Self-touch.
Totally.
Right? And so there was all of those little layers that really come across in our messaging, right?
Yeah. But now you've landed. I mean, you even told me that like, man, I like, if I was going to do it again, I would give my kid less diaper time.
Yeah.
So that their like self-touch was more accessible.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm like, just the fact that we put up so many barriers, whether that's put a diaper on or tell our kids like they have to wear clothes after they come out of their room or like tell them to go get dressed, is kind of sending this message to little ones who don't really have this like, oh, what does my sexuality mean at all? That like there are some parts of their bodies that aren't accessible, like you said. Yeah.
Totally.
And so like I remember like I'd have kids that would just be playing and then they would pause and like take their pants off and like touch their genitals. And I was like, don't do that, you know? And I would go back and be like, oh yeah, you found do you want a mirror? Do you want to see that better? Like, oh, here's a picture of it. Like, does that feel interesting? And I had other kids who like touching their genitals while they were in the bathtub.
Totally. Or
kids who liked more privacy when they were getting dressed and they would just spend more time in their room when they were alone. And I would not, like, I do remember times being like, what are they doing in there? Should I knock? Should I know what's happening? I want to know because I want to I'm worried about it,
Totally.
So those are some of my thoughts.
I love that. In fact, I see more and more that parents are landing in this place of like enabling self-exploration, like with the mirror, like you talked about, right? Or sometimes like a lesson, know, or like I even like have seen parents when they're youngish or whatever, and they're showering together, like woman and woman, that they'll be like, oh yeah, this is mine. And they'll like kind of do a little bit of like lesson, where it's like, let me promote self-exploration, not just even allow it.
Right. But actually promote it. Yeah.
Yeah. Individually, that's where I've landed too. Like I am like, let's promote.
Yeah.
Like this is such a healthy thing, you know? And like, sure, there might be like social boundaries that could make that like more comfortable areas.
Yeah.
And so like I would promote it in those socially comfortable areas, right? Like bath time or in a room or like those kind of moments, you know? And then I would be very careful to discourage it, you know?
To not, like you would want to not discourage it.
Yeah, like I would avoid discourage, like I understand that there are public situations where like maybe that isn't really appropriate, you know? I would be trying to do anything I could to not discourage it, even if I redirected.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I think a common one, like, maybe, like, is, I don't know, the car's even pretty private, but, like, we were with these kids once on a beach, you know? And this kid was, like, just self-touching over and over and over and over again, you know? And eventually the dad was just like, hey, come play ball with us, you know? And, like, that kind of redirection. Like, I don't even know if the word discourage is, like, but he just redirected in those social situations that maybe aren't in your value system.
You would or wouldn't redirect?
I would redirect in certain situations.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I know not every parent lands in this place either, you know, but like I would redirect in, really at this point though, we've made it to soothing.
Okay.
You know? Because like it would have to be like patternistic. Like if there's just like a little bit of touch and moving on, you know, or if there's a lot of touch, I would be like, hey, like, are you okay? You know, like I do have all girls, you know? And so I'm like, okay, did you get any sand in there? Like, do you need help washing? You know, like that would be my concern. Like I would just like go and try to make sure that, and then if it was okay and it was patternistic after that, I might redirect. I probably wouldn't every time, but sometimes I would redirect, I think.
And not press on the redirect. Like if they didn't engage with you on the redirect, I imagine you would just like, okay, let it go.
Let it go. Yep.
Would you readdress it another time and talk about, like I could see myself maybe choosing not to redirect because I don't want to like create a shame moment in that social situation, but then later being like, hey, I noticed this. Just wanted you to know, like, it's probably more polite to do that in private.
Yeah.
If you can remember that.
Depends on the age of my kid, you know?
Okay.
Like my like 7-year-old who's pretty sharp, probably. My 5-year-old, no. My 3-year-old freak, no.
Yeah.
My 3-month-old.
So more if they're developmentally capable of like reflecting back and like seeing like, oh, okay, I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I do that so often where I'm like, hey, come do this with me. That I don't think my kid would connect it at all.
As like a,
this is weird. Why is dad trying to get me to play with him?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like I do that all the freaking time. And so like it wouldn't really be odd to my child. I don't think,
yeah.
You know? But like if one of my kids, like it's like my kid gets older, I might actually like, hey, like we believe that in our home, we do private parts are for private places.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, let's try to create some level of privacy. But like, if she needs to adjust herself when we're at the beach, you know, like sometimes privacy is just like kind of going in the back a little bit or whatever. Yeah. You know, like
just discretion of some sort.
Versus like, hey, you've got to go to your bedroom.
You
know? But like, we do try to teach private parts in private places.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Let's transfer. We did this a little bit already just because they kind of flow into each other.
Yeah.
But let's transfer to this like soothing touch. So if you see a child that is like rhythmically touching themselves, you know, like what do you see? Where are parents kind of typically at with that? What do people kind of believe? You know, like this parenting, even though maybe everyone that's listening to this isn't a parent, but like sometimes when you are a parent, you have to kind of decide where you believe. Yeah. You know, because now you have to teach it. Yeah. You know, and so like where do you kind of see people land with the self-soothe?
I think still in like a little bit of a panic.
Okay.
And like what the question always is like, what's this going to become? Right. But I don't think always. I think sometimes like I also see parents just not worry about it and giggle about it. I actually remember as like a teenager, we were with some family friends and their young daughter had this like self-soothing rhythmic pattern of touch happening. And I heard their parents and my parents just giggle about it. Yeah. And just that alone sent me this message of like, oh, like there was a little bit of like, wait, is that awkward that she's doing that? But then there was this also like, but they're not stopping it and it seems to be fine, you know?
Totally.
So there was this like me in my mind trying to figure out what does everybody else think about this? Yeah. So how do I want to think about this, you know?
Yeah, totally.
I think it'd be interesting for parents to like, you guys have somebody to have this conversation with, like, what message did you get around that self-touch as a kid? You know, I also know like I heard a story of one girl who like discovered that touching herself felt good, and she went and told her mom because she was so excited.
Yeah.
And her mom was like, what? You know? And then others who were told like, oh, yeah, just don't do that. And then they were kind of like, oh no, why not? You know? And even though their parent tried to approach it in a very like, oh, it's not a big deal, but just don't do it.
Yeah.
They still, it was really jarring for them.
Yeah.
You know?
It's hard because where they're coming from emotionally matters, you know? Like they're coming from this like, oh my gosh, this feels good, you know, to this like, hey, don't. Like that spread is big.
Yeah.
You know, and so it will like leave a lot of emotional residue.
Right.
You know, and that seems to be more prevalent as a teen than it is prepubescently in my experience. You know, I see dads get really nervous with their daughters. More nervous than they get with their boys, actually, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, interesting.
Where like, I don't know. I think there is like a kind of cultural pattern of dads being uncomfortable with their daughter's sexuality,
right?
You know, and I think that they've labeled that touch as sexual, you know, and so that like when they see their daughter do that, like I think there's a lot of like dad fear, you know, and then the dad fear actually turns to mom handle it, and so I feel like I get a lot of like dad fear goes to like instead of a dad doing something either, he like usually pushes the mom to like, hey, like. What are we gonna do about that? You know, yeah. And then the mom all of a sudden is dealing with what do I think / pressure from their husband, you know, and like I think that's a difficult spot for people to land in.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's just like now you're landing. The mom is now landing for two people, which I think is very unfair.
Right.
You know, instead of landing just for her. I do see like less, like, I think less panic across when it's the same gender.
Yeah.
Right? Like a mom that has her daughter, she's like, oh, it's fine. Like, you know, and then the dads are a little more fine with
their boys.
Just because I think that this their comfort. I think
shared experience.
Yeah. Totally. But I think this is where I start to see parents intervening. Like, and planning on intervening. Like, that are like in a moment when they're just conceptually thinking about it. They're not making an emotional choice. They're kind of making a conscious like rational choice when they're with me, you know, that like, oh, I think I would do something
about this.
Yeah. Like
what percentage of parents do you think would want to do something about it? And what percentage do you see that you think would just be like, I'm just going to let it go?
I think if it was would want to, and they're just like consciously choosing, I think the truth is in practice, I think 50% of parents interrupt it.
Okay.
But I think like if they were like what percentage want to interrupt it, I would say like 80. Like I think like that 30% overlay are people that just kind of freeze and don't know what to do and then they do nothing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Not because they're consciously choosing to do nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think like 20% of people are choosing to do nothing. Now I think that number is growing every year. Like I think more and more people are like, wait, this doesn't need to be interrupted. Like this is just a kid soothing themselves. They soothe themselves in tons of different ways.
All kinds of different
ways.
This
is fine, especially prepubescent.
Right.
You know? But then the parents who interrupt, they're really interrupting because they think that this is dictating a future when a kid is 17 or 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And there's like the fear of the 10 years from now that makes them do something
about the now.
You know? Individually, now what I would do with this, you know? I would never interrupt a private self-soothe. I just wouldn't.
Private would be to you what?
Private to me would be like, honestly, the car is someplace that I would even consider private, even though it's not super private. You know, it's helpful that we just got a giant Sprinter van and now it feels even more private, you know? But like a bathroom, like the bathroom, I would never interrupt that. Bathtub, never would interrupt that. In bed, never would interrupt that. In a movie, I would maybe consider it depending on who's there, you know, and how close they're sitting next to someone else. Just like, okay, like, is this person next to them comfortable? Yeah. You know? But, like, those places, I don't think I would ever interrupt it. Yeah. Like, to me, like, I like to compare it to other self-soothes. Right. It's like, okay, this is just a normal thing that people do. It's a knee it's like a bouncing of the leg. It's a, like, hands through the hair. It's rubbing my hands together. Like, that's all this is right now. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And, like, so I individually would never interrupt it. Now, if we're in public, you know, that might be something where we talked about a little bit before. Like, I would try to redirect without putting pressure on that moment. And if they didn't take the redirection, I probably wouldn't do anything about it. Yeah. Maybe with my older kid, like 6+7, with my oldest child where she was at cognitively at 6, which I don't know if every kid will be there at 6. like I maybe would have like came up to her and whispered and said like, hey, like, do you need to go to the bathroom or something? And just like brought it to her attention. And then maybe I would end with, remember we only touch private parts in private places. Yeah. And that's maybe where I would like, that's the extent of all I would do as a parent. And that's where we've landed as a couple too. Like the two of us have done a lot of like, what would you do stories. Like when we do our long drives, we like to do like, okay, parenting moment. What would you do? And then just like hear each other's ideas. And then eventually we like have landed there as a couple.
Yeah, I love that. That's cool. I think that you've identified some really awesome things that parents can utilize, right? Like their developmental age, where they're at age-wise is going to dictate like how much pressure you want to put on their social acceptability.
Totally.
Right?
And that's just not from you either. Like everyone accepts that,
Yeah.
Like this little cousin peeing into the ocean water.
Right.
It's like, fine, he's 3.
Yes.
But like if a 13-year-old that starts doing that, then everyone's like, what?
Yeah.
And so like.
That's okay to have some progression there.
Yes.
And for that to change as age
absolutely
hits, right?
Absolutely.
I think the other thing we're hearing is that like making a decision on like worrying about what their future choices are.
Yeah.
Right now is probably not the best idea in terms of like their future sexual choices. Their future sexual choices are not determined on their body soothing patterns at all.
Yeah.
That like we want to believe our kids are choosers beyond that they're not like destined to something just because they're developmentally experiencing their body using it to soothe in normal and natural ways.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, there are things I would look out for, like as we hit this coping pattern stage.
And the coping pattern was different than just the self-soothing instances in where it's like showing up in similar situations repetitively.
Yes.
There's some consistency to it.
So like we moved recently, and if one of these patterns showed up because they just made a bunch of new friends and it showed up as a consistent thing that all of a sudden seems new and it seems like, boom, this just showed up like a flash in the pan kind of a thing, and now it's here, right? Like that would be something for me that I'm like, okay, is my child like having experiences that are making this become a thing?
Yeah, like what are they experiencing with their friends, peers, or family members, or whatever?
Is there like touch going on in some way? Especially if there's a new touch. Like I would also have like especially a lookout for male anal penetration where they're like choosing to penetrate their own anus with their finger or with something.
Okay.
Right? Like that's something where it would be kind of red flaggy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, like this kid may have had a traumatic
experience.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, like manual touch, I would not be very concerned about.
Okay.
If there was like a desire to do oral touch or like they were playing out oral stuff with their like animals or something with their own genitalia, like that would be another symbol that I would say like this is a strong enough symbol I would be looking for. Is there abuse situations that could be happening and let me look through those and try to find something like that might exist, right?
And could those show up also as instances more so than just patterns? Or would you need to see repetitive instances?
If an instance showed up with like an anal or an oral thing, like that would typically be like
a red flag right away.
Where did they get this idea? You know, because like that idea doesn't typically come naturally.
Right.
Just like to a kid that's prepubescent.
Right.
You know? And so like a prepubescent kid that had like I saw something like that, my wife and I would start evaluating how can we check on these situations. You know, and make sure that all these situations are safe. You know, would I rip my kid away from all those situations immediately? No, I wouldn't. But I would be looking for those. And I think parents don't know when their concern should come. And so I think they're concerned a little earlier than they need to be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But like that's the stage in which I would go, okay, there's some level of concern here.
Okay.
Let's start doing some parental research. Maybe not intervention yet.
Right.
But if it started showing up patternistically, right, or like we see things that are happening with other neighborhood kids or whatever, like then that would be, but my feelers would be out if one of those two things happened, right? Cool. Now, just patternistic touch where someone is like manually touching themselves in a consistent way, right? Like this is where I see a lot of parents think that they need to interrupt.
Right.
That they like, I think they label it as masturbation, you know, and then I think most parents land on this needs to be interrupted, you know. Now, I wouldn't say that all of them interrupt still. I would say it's similar still to 50%.
50,
I think
okay.
a lot of people just like pause and just like, I don't know what to do.
I don't know
nothing.
how to
Yeah.
interrupt or what to say. Or
But I think most have the intention of interrupting, you know? I think I went first last time, but I'll go first again, then you can go next. But like this, like if I would interrupt it, you know, probably not. Yeah. It would be important to me that my child has other patterns in which they could fall asleep, relax, like deal with an emotional whatever, you know? Like the danger to me would be that they come with that's their primary only coping skill. Like that's a danger to me.
So this is something that like could be talked about just in family life in general of like as kids are growing in those elementary school years, right?
Totally.
That you're just teaching different ways to cope, different ways to soothe yourself, different ways to relax, right? And helping kids understand like, oh yeah, like we have these experiences, we need to relieve stress. Here are some different ways of doing that.
Now, via raising a baby, you know this in kids' coping skills. Like you had to help this kid cope for like 18 months primarily, and then more after that. Like it's not like you stop helping a kid cope until they're like 12 probably or 30, you know? But like I know that my youngest daughter copes phenomenally if I take her outside. She could be so annoyed, but if I take that girl outside, she's good. Another one of my daughters is like if that girl gets a hug, she feels so much better. I think this other girl who is like, if she does something active and moves and does something kind of crazy, she settles her whole entire body.
Yeah.
You know? And like another one of my daughters is like really good and she does these like breaths, you know? And so like I have learned what their other coping skills are.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think now as a parent, as they become conscious of their life choices, I want to go, you know what? Something special about you, so-and-so, is that you cope like this. Like you used to do this as a baby all the time.
Yeah.
Like let's practice doing that to help them develop those coping skills.
I love that.
And so like as a parent, you are in tune. If you just look back at their history on how this child copes. You know, some of them are more oral where like they need to eat something or chew on something.
Yeah.
You know? And like
some want music.
Yeah.
Some want to just be next to someone, right? There's a whole variety of things that it could look like.
And I would just be trying to teach and help a child use those in those situations. So like if I have a child who like typically would copingly self-touch their genitals at night, you know, but I also know that that child really does a great job with music.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to set up music for them at night.
Yeah.
You know, and just at least have both going on.
Yeah.
You know, or one that's good with touch. Like, okay, I'm going to come and lay next to this kid, you know, and like I'm going to like rhythmically rub their back and that will be soothing just like their touch of their penis or clitoris would be.
Right.
You know, and so like my goal as a parent there would be to teach other coping skills so my child has many coping skills as they enter pubescence.
I love that. And I would just... I would say I agree with your approach and just want to emphasize here like that you're saying the goal is to teach skills, not to stop the behavior.
Yeah.
And if I think sometimes we can be like, okay, well, I'm teaching the skills so that the behavior will stop.
Yeah.
And I don't hear that that's what you're saying. So
That
I
is
just wanted
not
to
what I'm
highlight
saying.
that for our parents here is that like that is not your goal.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't enable this with a tool, you know? Like I have like little kids I know and like who use like massage guns or something like that, or like even like I've seen these like kind of vibrator toys, you know, and they'll like hold it next to them at night and that'll be their like soothing, you know?
Yeah.
Now, I would probably not give a lot of access to those.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
But I am not trying to stop the self-touch coping pattern.
Right.
I just would not want it to be enabled via a tool.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And like maybe it'd be good here to just discuss like why that is not your goal. I think it'd be good for parents
Yeah, I
to
agree.
hear that.
I think, like, first off, I do not think there's any correlation between that and, like, sexual deviance later in their life.
Okay, cool.
Like, I don't. Also, it's their freaking body. And so I'm like, you know what? It's your body. Good for you, you know?
Yeah.
Also, like, this kid isn't, like, I obviously am like a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I believe in the covenant to like not have a sexual relation with anyone that I'm not married to.
Right.
You know, this child is not having a sexual relation with themselves.
Right.
You know, like this is just a way that they are trying to soothe their body. You know, and so like I would not call it a breach of a law of chastity. You know, and so like for all these reasons are reasons I wouldn't interrupt it. I think that is, I want my child to feel like they know their body too.
Yeah.
You know, like I see a lot of couples who like will get married and start to be sexual and they don't really know their own body.
Yeah.
And man,
There's
is
so
that
much
hard.
discomfort with the idea of their genitals in all kinds of
Totally.
ways that it just is hard.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I do not want that fear to be created.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with fear comes secrecy, with secrecy comes shame.
Yeah.
And then like really like then there's a lot of distance.
Yeah.
In my ability to help this child feel confident in themselves.
And I would add that, like, I think if you have a kid who eventually is going to have some sort of pattern of masturbating, let's say, in the future, that like trying to interrupt this behavior or even stopping this behavior is not going to then prevent them from that behavior in the future. Like they'll just be the kind of personality that needs to learn skills at that stage for coping with those feelings and desires, right? But that they're not correlated, like you said, and there's no correlation to sexual deviance. And that like, if you were successful at stopping it, which you probably wouldn't be because they usually just go more into hiding, right? Yeah. Then if you were successful at that, you've created some shame and fear. So when they are struggling in the future, they don't have as much access to figuring that out and solving it.
Totally. Yeah, I see a lot of parents ask me how to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do I stop this behavior? And my next thing I say to them is why? Like, why do you want to stop it?
Yeah.
Like, what is the fear for you? You know?
Yeah.
And like, is this your fear or is this really like for them? You know, like I wonder like, or is this like your own embarrassment because like you're afraid what your mother-in-law is going to say?
Right.
Or is this actually really like for them?
Right.
You know? Mm-hmm. And like, I like to start there. Now there are some parents who are like, you know what? I don't believe in this. Like, if you didn't believe in it, how would you interrupt it? You know? Yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, here are some things I would do. I would try to teach these other skills and then help them do them. You know,
like participate.
Yeah, like if you land at like, you know what, I don't believe that coping self-genital touch is godly. If you land there, okay. Like if I landed there, which I am not there. But if I was there, I would teach these other skills. I would get my kid like a little stress ball. I would like rub my kid's back at night. I would give them a book so they could read at night. Like I would start to teach other things that they can do in those moments, you know, and then like be there for the implementation of those things. Right. Yeah.
I think that I'm just thinking through like, oh, if I was trying to stop that pattern as well and using some of these teaching of skills, would I also express a value system around it? Because, and I'm a little bit back and forth, and here's why, because I think that if our intent is to stop the behavior, then that is going to get communicated through the feeling. Like they're going to feel that, but if we're not speaking to it, there's going to be a little like hesitancy. Yeah. Versus like, hey, I actually don't think that that's a great idea to you know, if you were talking to your kid about it, like, hey, I just don't think that's a great coping tool. And I want to teach you so that's why I'm teaching you these other things.
Yeah. I think
then you could leave it at that.
Totally. It doesn't need like, and I love this, like, I don't believe or I don't think, you know, like, I think that's great. Just to like own where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really positive. Yeah, let's pause for a second. We ended up kind of teaching like the parenting skills.
We did.
They just kind of came out. Like, I just want to come back to like the purpose of this podcast, right? Like the purpose of this podcast is to separate what is self-touch, you know, and like to broaden our definition of masturbation, you know, and then look at these things individually and decide like, okay, where do I believe? You know? Yeah. And then wherever you land with your belief system, like awesome, like start implementing that. And as you implement it, I think people will learn like, oh, maybe not. Like I kind of want to adjust this because like, you know what, like I'm seeing how so-and-so does it. And I actually like kind of believe that more, right? You know, or like this felt really uncomfortable with my child. Like I don't actually believe that anymore. And so like, I'm going to adjust because of how it felt when I delivered my current belief system.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure.
Like there is so much space for adjustment, but I think it's important for parents to land, what do I believe about prepubescent self-touch? What do I believe about soothing touch? Like if a kid is rhythmically touching themselves. And then what do I believe about coping, soothing, patternistic touch where it's happening consistently? What do I believe? Do I want to interrupt those? When do I interrupt those? Why would I interrupt those? How am I going to interrupt those? Right? And then like start to land what you believe and then try implementing. And then you will adjust.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. Thanks for joining us for this discussion today. We hope it was valuable for you and your families. Our website, trueconnectionsrecovery.com, has a bunch of resources that you can access to get support from us.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we're trying to help individuals, right? Whether it's through like individual recovery, like partner support, even like parental support, like how can I set my home up as a place for success?
Yep. We will be putting like technology management resources, other educational tools, or like workshops that might be up and coming in the area.
Just trying to provide ways for like families to feel supported, right? And so all of that you can find there on that website.
The more that this gets shared, and like as you talk about it with others that you know, like the discussions kind of flow, and we can all grow in this area together.
Yeah, we really succeed as a community.
Yep.
Thank you.